So people have been asking me, is the Riftbound TCG too complicated? And is it too complicated for beginners? Let's talk about it. Hey guys, my name is Vincent Baker. I'm a game designer and artist, and I'm happy to have you here. So for a little background on myself with League of Legends, Riftbound, all that stuff, I played League of Legends for a year. I basically played the week before Jinx was released, and once she released, you best believe I enjoyed playing that character with her theme song and everything. It went so hard. And really, the game itself, I didn't really love personally, but it was more about playing with my friends and having a good time with them. And I loved the characters, the art, the story, that kind of stuff. So, yes, I actually enjoyed the story even before Arcane. I loved like the little nuggets of lore that they sprinkled in, and I just thought they had a really cool world that they were building. And to see that come to life in a TCG is exciting. As far as Legends of Runeterra goes, I thought that game was phenomenal. I thought it was a lot of fun. I actually think it was maybe the best well-designed card game I've ever played. I was so shocked and surprised at how fun it was, and I really wish we could sort of have that experience in physical form. And then lo and behold, we now have the Riftbound TCG. Now, with that being said, there are some or a lot of differences between Riftbound and Legends of Runeterra. They do share art, but the gameplay is not the same. And so when it comes to a beginner learning how to play this game, apparently Riot did acknowledge that they did try to make things a little simpler to begin with, but I'm still hearing new players say that this game is really challenging for them to get a hold of. And what I find interesting is when people talk about the game being complicated, they're bringing up it having a fair amount of keywords. But to their credit, they actually have reminder text on their cards, which is essentially text that reminds you of what that keyword does. So if you don't remember it, you can just read the italicized text that follows, and then you can remember what it does. They also come with keyword cards in their packs. It seems about 50% of their packs come with a card that does that. And then the other 50% of their cards come with a turn of phase sort of structure of cards. So it basically tells you the whole A, B, C, D thing, the awaken, begin, channel, and draw step. So this card here, which helps you remember the phases of the turn. And during your turn, you can play cards in any order you want. You can capture, you can attack, you can choose how you want to go about your turn. So it's not structured in phases like old school card games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic the Gathering. Instead, you can play cards and do things whenever you want, which I think is more welcoming to new players and is a great addition to the game. Now, that being said, those things make the game a bit simpler, but the things that make the game more complicated, a lot of people aren't really bringing up. For example, there's a lot of card zones and cards to care about in this game more so than others. You have your deck, you have your runes deck, you have your champion, you have your leader, you have. I feel like I'm missing something. I feel like there's something else. There's a lot. There's a lot of zones. There's a lot of cards that you have to keep up with, and that's like for the gameplay. It's not talking about an extra deck or a sideboard. So there's a lot going on there. On top of that, there's different spell speeds that is pretty confusing because the game wants to sort of situate it and set up like it is Magic the Gathering in terms of like, oh, well, you can react to this, you can do this. But it's not exactly the case. So, for example, you can't play anything on your opponent's turn unless they open up a chain that you can react to. And what is very interesting and complicated is if a player plays a unit card that does not have a triggered ability, you cannot react to that. So they can play it and you can't do anything about it. You can't even play a card that you could normally play on their turn if you play a vanilla creature. And vanilla is simply like a creature or a unit in this case that has no abilities. So that's pretty weird. It's a little wonky. In this game, you have different spells. You have your like normal spells, which you can only play on your turn. And then you have action spells, which you can play on your opponent's turn if a showdown's occurring. And then there is reaction spells, which you can play to react to something your opponent does throughout their entire turn. And the reaction spells and the action spells have two separate stacks. So if there's ever a case where actions and reactions are both happening, you have to remember how they stack, or in this case, chain. And then it is the first one in is the last one out, but they have a separate stack for the reactions than what the actions have. And to my knowledge, that's not done in any other card game, so that could be very confusing. It makes you question, you know, why is Riftbound designed this way? Because it just makes things maybe more complicated. On top of that, they have over 30 day one erratas. And for reference, Magic the Gathering has had around that same amount in the 30 years it's existed. And so for Riftbound to have this much, to me, this adds more complication than the way the cards are worded or their effects or anything like that, because the cards, these 30 cards, don't technically work the way that they are written. They work differently, and you have to look that up. You have to expect players to go online and pull up a sheet to look at, or just play the cards completely wrong. And to have that on 30 cards out the gate is pretty troubling, and that does make the game a lot more complicated. To go further with that, the rule books themselves have been updated so much to where the rule books themselves seem like they're obsolete, and you now have to check out the new rule book online. So these are definitely major issues for playing and learning how to play Riftbound, and it's definitely concerning. As far as things being too complicated, like rules wise, I'm actually a little bit worried that the characters themselves aren't complicated enough. And what I mean by that, whenever you look at a different champion, you see for Ahri, for example, when I hold, you score 1 point. So just a very simple effect, which I do like the idea of having a simple effect. You know, not everything needs to be complicated. But you have Ahri, and she's a fan favorite. She's one of the most popular characters within League of Legends. And with her effect being so simple, you are going to run into this issue where you're going to quickly have to power creep this. This is not going to stay as just a one effect character. As they continue to release new cards, they will go from 1 ability to 2 to 3. And it's because you don't have much room with one character. I actually, as a game designer, whenever I made Spellslingers, this game, I literally had different characters in that, and they each had 1 ability. And I quickly learned that as I was expanding and creating new cards for the game, that you would run out of design space so quickly, because whenever each character is supposed to have 1 ability, it becomes so hard to design things that are easy to understand and is on the same power level as another singular ability. But if you implement what I call the mix and match strategy as a game designer, and you have 2 different abilities, that opens up the window to so many more possibilities. Because, for example, with our game Truckun, you discover different isekai worlds, and the way that those are formed is by combining 2 different cards at random. And so you can take a 50 card deck, instead of having 50 different options, when you take 2 50 card decks and you can mix and match them to different options, that creates thousands of possibilities. So you open up so much more of that, and I really wish that Riftbound had started out the gate with that, because if you look at the spoilers that they've already released for their second set, they're already expanding into having 2 different effects for their cards, already making these obsolete. So if you're jumping into Riftbound, it seems like it's like an investment, you know, more so than anything, because these cards are going to become so obsolete so quickly. And even in the meta, there's only like 1 playable deck, maybe 2. And so it's just really unfortunate to see. And I really think that they could have made things less complicated from a game system perspective, and made the characters a little bit more complex to make sure that they have room to grow and that they have a lot of unique things that you can do. Because when it comes to Ahri, when she says, "When I hold, you score 1 point," how does that really like reflect Ahri as a character? How does that feel like a fox that's charming your opponents and luring them in? It doesn't really embody her as a character, and so I really feel like we could have gotten a little bit more things that really brought out these characters and who they are. Now, don't get me wrong, I know like with Jinx, she's crazy, she's the loose cannon, so as you know, her whole game plan is to shred your cards from your hand so you can use her effect to draw more cards. But unfortunately for them, they didn't do a good job designing Jinx in her totality to where she's not really a playable or viable deck. Overall, Riftbound does seem too complicated in the wrong areas and not complicated enough in the right areas. That's my personal take on it. I will say that I have really appreciated the Riftbound community. You guys have been so welcoming, so nice, and so awesome to talk to. So definitely don't think that anything I say that comes off as negative or is even negative is nothing but love for me and wanting the game to be as best as possible. I definitely don't hate the game, and I definitely want to play more of it, and I'm excited to see where it goes. I want it to be as best as it can be, so just know that a little tough love sometimes can make things better. So that's where I'm standing on it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. vast majority of people that watch my videos on this channel don't subscribe, but it can definitely, or it will definitely help me out in what I'm trying to build with Vindicated. So thank you so much, guys. Take care and stay awesome.
Guess I have no choice. It's time to save the world.